Hello everyone. Today I'm very excited about our 14th interview from the ToolSense interview series Workshop Talks. I'm Jennifer and I'm responsible for communication at ToolSense. Our guest today is Norman Smith, Managing Director of CLG Hygiene Supplies. And then of course I would like to introduce Alexander Manafi, CEO and co-founder of ToolSense. Mr. Smith, perhaps you could tell us a few sentences about yourself and CLG Hygiene Supplies.
Sure. My history goes back in the hygiene business about 28 years. In that time, I was managing director of a large service industry company that competed against companies like Rent-A-Kill and various other local organizations. We grew at the time to be probably the biggest hygiene service provider, and it continues to be one of the leading companies in South Africa in the service industry. In that period, I also worked for an international company, Rubbermaid, for about 3 years, and through my relationships over the years with the supply chain to the service industry, I had a relationship with an old gentleman by the name of Costa Lambrianis, who owned Costa Lambrianis, which has been going for just on 30 years now as well. He wanted to sell the business, he wanted to retire. Long story short, we got together, and about a year later, myself and my partners bought the business from his family because he unfortunately passed away. And that was 8 years ago. And in the 8 years, we have continued to develop product ranges that we can now supply to the service industry. I'm no longer involved in servicing the actual industry, but as a supply chain to all the service companies, such as companies like Rent-A-Kill and Steiner and various others, small, medium, and large. One of the things that I've always wanted to do is to get involved in better technology in the service industry. So that's how we came about to start looking for technology that can assist our client base.
Thank you very much. Then we already come to the first question. Mr. Smith, how did you become aware of ToolSense in the first place?
Okay, so going back 8 years from the time we bought the business, as I said, I wanted to start offering more than just a dispenser in a washroom environment. And I also knew all the difficulties that the service industries have by servicing thousands and thousands of washrooms on a daily basis and a lot of tens of thousands of units. And it is extremely difficult because companies have everything from sophisticated SAPS units that cost a fortune down to spreadsheets, and even the large organizations down to spreadsheets. And it becomes very difficult for them to give service to their client base. So I started looking at IoT and technology, as I said, 8 years ago when we took over Costa. And we looked at some smart dispensers. We looked at developing a smart dispenser within South Africa. And I realized that with electronics and Wi-Fi's necessities and all that was a long stretch, and our market wasn't ready for it yet. And I know that the Europeans have just started getting into it now. Some of the big supply chain companies are trying it, but we then started looking at developing something locally. I interviewed a number of different companies that build apps, and I had this concept in my head of what it should be, QR codes being the main center. My colleague and our sales manager must get the credit for, we sent her to the ISSA show, and I think she was tired of looking at soap dispensers and hot air dryers and the various, and she wandered off into your area and came across your stand and spoke to your people. And she brought that back, and it almost 100% fitted with a vision that I had of, I didn't know exactly, I knew what I wanted, but obviously I knew that somebody had to spend a lot of hours to get there. And with a bit of effort from both sides, both companies, it looked like we could do something. And that's basically it happened very quickly after the show. Both yourselves and our sales manager, Adele, spent many hours busy, shall we say, panel beating and adjusting the system to be able to go into a new area, which I believe ToolSense had not gone into before. And that's basically how we got to know about ToolSense and how I got to know.
And what was the status quo in service management before ToolSense, and how do you think ToolSense will improve your processes?
Okay, so as I said, it's a very much a hit and miss of service supply in a lot of organizations, because they are trying to integrate their IT systems with service cycles. And just to put it in perspective, not too unlike, I would imagine, a motor car that has to be serviced every 3 months or every 6 months, and ToolSense assisting in that when it comes to fleet management. The same would apply. But in this particular case, you have to service an air freshener once a month. You have to service various other services that industry supplies on intervals, regular intervals. And it's been quite difficult, more so to get feedback that the service has been done, and more importantly, if that particular unit is not working, if the soap dispenser is leaking, if a paper towel cabinet's not dispensing. These can be very frustrating to the end user, who in turn blames the service provider, who in turn eventually blames us or whoever else is supplying the particular unit. So I believe that we're way down the line in testing the system. We have 3 or 4 big organizations busy testing it. It's still very much in the test phase, but one of our clients has used the system in a tender to a large group of banks nationally. And they're very excited, being our client, that the banking group has actually said that they are running ahead because of the system that they've offered them. So we're quite excited that's going to happen, and then the sky's the limit. We will take it further and be able to offer it in various of our clients, and perhaps even definitely offer it further into their businesses, because a lot of them have cleaning companies, plant rental companies, etc., etc. So I'm sure that the ToolSense product will expand into those areas.
And now a question for Alexander. What do you find most interesting about working with CLG Hygiene Supplies?
So I think 3 points. So first, of course, the let's say the history and the knowledge that Norman has about the industry is very, very fascinating for us, and I think we can learn a lot from that. Second, we never really thought about hygiene supply. So we always thought about machines and assets and equipment rather, and not really about hygiene supplies like soap dispensers or hand dryers. But that was very interesting, all the processes that are linked to these kind of assets, and where it's, of course, because of the cost, also difficult to work with IoT technology, because somebody has to pay for that. So that we can make the related processes easier and streamline them with a simple QR code is a very interesting application of the technology. And then the third part that is very interesting for us is the South African market itself, because we haven't really gone into that, and with CLG as a partner, it's also a very interesting opportunity to get more feedback from this market, because I think it's also very unique in the dynamics there. And it's just also great to see the effort that that the team at CLG is putting into this, and how fast this is really getting accepted by the end users. So the time until this really has taken off and is really working and it's getting used daily was really fast, and that's awesome for us to see.
And Mr. Smith, where do you see the advantages in using ToolSense?
Firstly, the product itself, as I said, fits in very much into the vision I had and that I believe that the marketplace needs. And more importantly, the proactive interaction with ToolSense and the assistance that we've got so far. So a big advantage is the partnership. Nothing can happen in life unless there's collaboration and partnership in every aspect. The same goes with our client base. We would not exist if we didn't collaborate with them. And this is a big advantage for us, I believe, where we can assist them to move forward and give a better service with our products and all other products, not necessarily just what we supply, but we are one of the market leaders now in the hygiene supply industry. And I think this is the next phase. Nobody else is doing it yet. So I like to lead and take chances, and other people follow. And however, I think with ToolSense, there's not a chance. I am very confident that this product will hit the market. We've kept a very low profile. We've only spoken to a couple of organizations, and the response has been very good. So, that's phase one. Phase two is to start marketing the product. And once we've ironed out all the bits and pieces, and it's work in progress. I think as we go along, we'll probably get a lot of requests from the customer base again too, which we will again collaborate with ToolSense with.
And how about service and business benefits? Where do you see maybe time or cost savings, or even potential additional revenues?
Well, I think to start off with, for our customer base, we're going, as I said, the system allows us to offer not just a soap dispenser. It allows them to be able to find out where that dispenser is, because as you can imagine, the industry is not unlike facilities management organization with hundreds or even thousands of pieces of cleaning equipment that are rather expensive. These units are smaller, but there's a lot more of them, and they're all over the show. So some of our medium-sized businesses could be servicing anything up to, 10,000 washrooms in various parts of the country, down to small little operations, up to large buildings, multi-buildings. So I see the benefit for us to, I would say, not lock the client in with us, but certainly make it tough for anybody else to break in to that particular market. So for us, that is a big advantage. For our client, more importantly, they can confirm that they have done services without a lot of difficulty. They can find out exactly where their pieces of equipment are. What I often see is these contracts normally last a 2-year period, and then very often it'll move from one service provider to another. The service provider forgets to take off expensive equipment like hot air dryers, as an example. And these things just sit on the wall as carcasses, or they get taken off and thrown in a warehouse. And I think that that'll be a big advantage to our client base as well.
And maybe now the question directed to Alexander, what would you want to add here?
So for me, it will be interesting also maybe in the future how we can incorporate, in addition to the process digitalization, also IoT technology into that. If we can go somewhere in the area in the future of very low cost way of doing maybe predictive maintenance even. So what I think the basis really is like streamlining the processes and let's say bringing a digital structure. So that's let's say what we are doing today. And then let's say in the future step, this will be very interesting to explore if and how we can incorporate IoT technologies and data, asset data into this and make it even more proactive to trigger those kind of processes. So, but there the question, of course, is also in relation to cost. So that will be very interesting to explore.
And Mr. Smith, maybe now, what are your long-term goals with ToolSense?
I think the long-term goals are to build a relationship going forward to a point where we are inseparable as partners. And as Alexander said, it doesn't stop here. As I said, a few years ago, we were looking at trying to develop a smart soap dispenser telling you when it needs a refill in it. And we looked at RFI and etc. And as Alexander said, it's got to be cost effective. But I think as technology keeps growing and as those types of technologies are improved on and reduced, I certainly see us building on the current platform into something very different into the future when it comes to supplying services to the hygiene industry and the facilities management. As I said, most of our clients are facilities managers or integrated services. So hygiene is one aspect, pest control is another. One of the trials that we're currently doing is also on bait stations, rat bait stations in a university, a very large university with 5,000 bait stations. So the sky's the limit, and I think we're going to get into one of Mr. Musk's rockets and go into the universe, hopefully.
Mr. Smith, how has the QR code technology simplified the processes?
I think that the QR code, what is interesting that ToolSense has seen a problem from tracking and looking after equipment in general, and used a technology that's they hit the nail on the head. They've gone into a cost-effective methodology which can only benefit both the end user client, people like ourselves that are going to start distributing into the various areas. So yeah, I think ToolSense has hit the nail on the head, and I think that just hearing Alexander, and it's quite exciting that he's starting to mention IoT and other things. I've always been very excited about that. So yes, hopefully we can experiment together.
That sounds good. And how do you assess the state of digitalization in the service and hygiene supplies industry, and how are these topics likely to develop over the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, so as I said, it's still very much not there. Some of the large companies like Torque and Eichler in Austria and various other large organizations are starting to try and develop IoT in the form of smart devices. But other than that, as I said, the tracking and control of service cycles and following up on items which have not been serviced or that are broken is very much a manual system at the moment in not only South Africa, I think sort of worldwide, and specifically Europe. As we are very similar to Europe when it comes to the service industry. The States are a bit different, they're more janitorial based, but even there I think there's great opportunities one day to move into that environment, which I'm sure ToolSense will once hopefully into various other markets to use the experience that we're both gaining out of this.
Alexander, would you like to add anything here?
No, I think that sums it up pretty nicely. I agree.
Okay. Then we already reached the end. Thank you very much for this exciting exchange. It was really nice to meet you, Mr. Smith, and perhaps we will hear from you again very soon.